Greetings, one and all, to the most cursed, most cringiest corner of the internet. A YouTube channel content creator actively alienating everyone in both the analog and digital world. Well, welcome and good evening, you wonderful dice of all alignments. I am Lunar D8. I see. I understand, but it's complicated. Yeah, you can't neglect the heart. I feel bad for saying this at Beatrice's funeral, but truth be told, I don't know enough about this person called Beatrice to tell you much about her. My apologies. Jessica Chan does live here, so she might know a little more than I do. Speaking of which, have you introduced yourself to this gentleman yet, Jessica Chan? Nah, not yet actually. There's this idiot going around pinching people's butts. So, I didn't really have the chance, eh? A bit late, Jessica looked embarrassed for acting rudely in front of an unfamiliar guest. She cleared her throat and made a beautiful bow that didn't fit well with her normal attitude. She even lifted the corners of her skirt in a curtsy. Pleased to meet you. My name is Jessica. Allow me to welcome you to the Ushiromia family on this splendid day. Please enjoy our hospitality and... Willard. Call me Will. Huh? What? Jessica's greeting had been of the old-fashioned sort. So Will also treated her like an old-fashioned lady, bending down on one knee, taking Jessica's right hand and kissing it. Wah. Not expecting her greeting to be returned in such an old-fashioned and formal way, Jessica turned red and was unable to speak. However, Will had returned the greeting in what he thought was a perfectly serious way, so he didn't understand what was making Jessica's face glow. Have I done something strange? No, not at all. I want to hear what you know about Beatrice. A sparkle leaked around the edges of Will's right hand, which was grasping Jessica's hand. Looks like the theater-going power is having its effect on Jessica. Didn't mean for that to happen. Oh well. Beatrice, is it? Well, I can tell you, but will you promise me something? Promise you won't laugh. Thinking about it now, it sounds more than a little crazy. What is it you know? I won't laugh. Tell me. Sure. Where should I start? To me, the Golden Witch Beatrice is sort of like one of the 7 mysteries of the Ushiromia family. You've heard of those, right? Almost all schools have a set of tall tales or ghost stories that get passed down. Like on some days, the piano in the music room will start playing by itself, or the skeleton in the science room dances around at night. Everyone's heard of them, but of course that doesn't mean they believe in them. The stories about Beatrice were the same. It was just one of those strange tales about our way-too-big mansion. The servants would sometimes talk about seeing things during their night patrols. Sometimes I felt a bit annoyed about them turning my home into a place of ghost stories, but I didn't pay it any more attention than that. That's how little it mattered to me, so during my normal everyday life, I would completely forget about the name Beatrice. Of course, when the huge portrait was first hung, it definitely felt creepy. Even I tried not to meet her eyes after dark, so it's no surprise that the servants found it eerie. But that only lasted for a short while. We all walked by the portrait every day. We gradually got used to it and eventually bored of it. I didn't really care anymore about the portrait of the mistress from grandfather's delusions. I get that. I'll bet it was different for the other relatives who only came a few times a year. Exactly. That's why every time the family came for a family conference, they'd always stand in front of that portrait and talk about Beatrice, so I was reminded of it every now and then. Ooh, Beatrice, I've come to play again. I've written a new spell. Take a look at it later, okay? Ooh? You really do like Beatrice, don't you? You've been in such high spirits ever since Grandfather had this portrait hung. Huh? Where's Angie? She went back with Aunt Kyrie to take some medicine. Her body really is frail, totally the opposite of Battler. She's the sort that gets sick whenever she's stressed. I also get sick on big holidays or trips. Maria's really tough by comparison. She's been talking about Beatrice nonstop since we left Nijima. Don't you think she's taking this a bit too far? It's not so bad, right? It's normal for kids to have an active imagination. If a kid told you that she had met Santa Claus, would you tell her she's a liar? Well, of course I wouldn't go that far. Maria kept talking to the portrait as though it was an old friend. She promised to play with it later as if she was talking to a living human. George, a man, seemed to think that this behavior from a younger member of the opposite sex was cute. But to be perfectly frank, Jessica, who was the same sex as Maria, found this behavior a bit unpleasant, even though she realized that she was dealing with a younger girl. At one time, even I was fascinated by anime heroines and other fictional characters. However, Maria's behavior seems to signify something more direct than mere fascination. It's something more definite, more vivid. Am I the only one who notices something odd about her? I'll bet the others all notice too, but try to ignore it because of that adult dignity George Nissan is always talking about. My apologies, everyone. The head is quite busy with his noble research. He wishes to eat lunch in his study today. Until a second ago, Kinzo's children had been complaining that eating lunch with their father would give them indigestion. But now that they knew he wasn't coming, they started grumbling about how he should at least spare the time to come down during the annual family conferences. Then let us begin lunch, everyone. I, Goda, have made use of all my talent and experience to make sure that you guests who have come from so far away will be entirely satisfied with your meal. No one's stomach would fail to rumble after hearing that from the great chef Goda. By the time the splendid dishes were laid out, everyone had stopped talking about Kinzo's absence. It was now Angie's absence that was being discussed. Apparently her stomachache had gotten so bad that both she and Kyrie couldn't make it to lunch. Poor thing. Goda, make sure you talk to Kyrie-san later and have some porridge made. Thanks for the concern. Sorry about all this. It seems she just can't handle much stress. That's how it is with young'uns. They're cute, at least when they're not regurgitating. George used to do that all the time. He really was frail way back then, right? Let's not talk about the past. It's not exactly a mealtime topic. Ooh, poor Angie. So she won't get to eat this yummy food? Yeah, poor kid. You can send some home with her. Let's make sure we play with her a lot when she gets better. Ooh, no way. She can't play with me. What are you talking about? Why? Because I'm going to play with Beatrice, of course, so I can't play with Angie. Play with Beatrice? You mean you're going to go off on your own again, to mumble to yourself and read some book? Jessica slightly regretted that she hadn't been more tactful. However, she couldn't wipe away that uncomfortable feeling she got every time Maria talked about Beatrice, and that feeling slipped out through her words. Ooh, I don't do it on my own. Beata was there too. Maria may be young, but she does know how to read a person's tone. She immediately burst out in anger, drawing the attention of everyone in the room. Normally, Rosa would have stopped her at this point. However, she happened to have gone to the bathroom at that moment, so there was no one to calm Maria down. Poor Jessica, you're just a clump of toxin. With Beatrice's weak magical power now, she'd burn to a crisp if she ever appeared in front of you. But she will appear before you eventually, yes, in front of everyone else too. And then the door to the Golden Land would open. But who knows if you'll be invited in? Of course she will take me there, to the Golden Land. But not Jessica, not someone who makes fun of Beatrice, not an unenlightened, stupid, confused, filthy, toxin-stained human. Laughter noises. When someone makes fun of Beatrice, it's like Maria becomes a totally different person. There was a theory about Maria having multiple personalities, wasn't there? Multiple personalities? Yeah, that probably describes it perfectly, or maybe that was Maria's idea of an ideal personality. You mean the thing about creating another self the way you want to be? Huh? How do you know my motto? Don't think too hard on it, you'll just get a headache. It was something Jessica once told Cannon. She had been talking about how anyone can create another self in the image of the person they want to be. I think we heard those words somewhere near the beginning of the second game. Now that I think about it, some very interesting stuff's been mentioned since very early on. Everyone has a self they really want to become, but they can't do it. Their current self is always surrounded by their lifestyle and the limits placed on them, so they have no way of changing themselves. True. Changing yourself means changing your environment as well. That's not easy to do. So my idea was to leave who I am now alone. I'd create another self, one that I really wanted to be. You felt suffocated, forced to live the life of a rich family's daughter, and you envisioned the self that you wanted to be. But I couldn't do anything outlandish at home, of course. Mom would just start yelling at me. So I made my plan. At home, I'd obediently do what my parents said, but I'd also create a second self to do what I wanted. At home, you did everything your parents told you to, and outside, you did what you wanted. That's a good way to live. You should be proud. Thanks. And well, if there's something you really want to be, and if you really work for it, it's easier to do than what you'd think. I figured Maria was pretty much the same. You think Maria's doing the same thing when she gets excited and starts talking and talking? Sometimes I think that's the person Maria really wants to be. As the youngest member of the family, she's adored, but not respected. Every time she learns something, there's always someone in the family who already knows it. She doesn't get to show off her knowledge about anything. Whenever she does learn something new, we try to smile and praise her, but that might actually have hurt her, so Maria wanted to become an authority on something. It's something that all young boys and girls think when they want to shake off their childhood. It's not a bad feeling when you learn something new and your parents praise you, but when you realize that your parents already knew that thing, it sometimes feels like they're talking down to you. When a kid learns that they're one-digit times table, their parents will probably praise them. However, inconsiderate parents will sometimes ask mean questions like, then what is 11 times 11? Or what is 16 times 16? Or something similar. If that happens, the kid will lose his feeling of accomplishment and will start to feel as though he could never surpass his parents. So, it's easy to guess why Maria got interested in the occult, something no one else knew about, and started learning more and more about it. I think the person Maria wants to be is an authority on the occult who everyone respects. And if she talked about the occult during the everyday life, Rosa would hit her. So like you, she's been hiding this other self most of the time. That's what I think she's doing at times like this. Maybe I should say that this is her real self slipping through the cracks to cover up her normal self. Actually, I've had some experience with that myself. I've thought at times that it'd be nice to become a frail, secluded lady, so I'd pretend to cough a lot, and it sort of became a bad habit, because everyone would be nice to you if you started coughing fits. Haha, no. Whenever the conversation turned to something I didn't like, or something that made me feel uncomfortable, I could do that to change the subject. I see. And that's another self you wanted to become. I'd appreciate if you didn't tell anyone about that. Then, just what is Maria's other self? An authority on the occult who can out-argue even the adults? Or else does it have something to do with her relationship with witches? Either way, denying Beatrice in front of Maria is clearly taboo. In her search for something more than her everyday life, Maria found it in Beatrice and inside herself. In that case, is going to the Golden Lamp of Beatrice, Maria's wish? Looks like we've gone off track. Anyway, Maria kept up that tantrum until Aunt Rosa got back. I should have left her be, but I fought back. You said there was no way Beatrice could exist. Something like that. If she exists, then just let me see her. Of course, once Maria started crying, I realized I'd gone too far. And then, at the end of the family conference, I was the only one still upset. Maria acted as though nothing had happened. Instead, she went off somewhere on her own and came back talking happily about how she'd played with Beatrice again. Everyone, me included, decided not to contradict her. By that time, it was best just to accept it and ignore it. Is that all you have to say about the family conference? About the conference? Yes. What I want to talk about is what happened after the conference was over and everyone left. Even after the conference ended, I still felt a bit uncomfortable. If Maria had just stayed mad, we would have made up with each other, and I could have put it all behind me. But since Maria got over it, it felt like I was the only one unsatisfied. "Oh, milady, why the gloomy face?" "Oh, it's you. It's nothing important. Did everyone make it back okay?" "If they're still on schedule, they should have reached Nijima Airport by now. You've done your part well, milady." "I haven't done anything. It's you servants who have done a great job." "Are you still upset by the fight you had? That fight you had with Maria-sama yesterday?" Sorta. "She's just a kid, right? It's not something you need to worry about, all grown up and in high school." "Do you think that all that was just a kid's nonsense? You mean about Beatrice-sama? See, even you call her Sama." "Beatrice is the name of the grandfather's mistress, the person he's still infatuated with. I realize that as a servant of Kumasawa-san can't speak of her indiscreetly. Still, that's now become the name of the fictitious witch who lives in this mansion. And it's almost natural for people to call her Sama. Beatrice is just a ghost story created by the adults to stop us from wandering into the forest. Maria just thought it was interesting one day and decided to act like it was true. Ho 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 ho! If you say such things, you'll end up regretting it. After all, Beatrice-sama exists." "Again, when you say stuff like that, you're just freaking me out. I may not be George Nissan, but I'm not going to go around shouting that Santa couldn't possibly exist. But that doesn't mean he actually exists. You'll find you're wrong there, milady." "Wrong?" "Oh yes, the gods dwell in all things, in the same way Beatrice-sama dwells in this mansion. Like the gods, Beatrice-sama will do you no harm if you respect her. As you say, it will be as though she doesn't exist. However, if you fail to show proper respect, her curse will descend upon you. Of course, this doesn't apply only to Beatrice-sama." "Heh, if there's a curse, let's see it. I just love to meet her." "Milady, you mustn't say such things." "Ah, my lady." "You did a fine job today." I'm staring right at her boobs. "Shannon, Goda-san, you guys know about Beatrice, right?" "Huh?" Still to say, Shannon and Kyrie are both very pretty. Well, I still say Kyrie looks like... Well, you guys... It would help if I actually show you guys a picture of Kyrie. I still think Kyrie looks like Ivy from Soul Calibur 2. The fighting game. I also think she looks like Kaoru, Nagisa, from Evangelion. I also think she looks like Sae, the VTuber. Everyone I listed is, well, hot, sexy. Well, I do know of her, of course. Why do you ask? The two looked at each other. They looked like a pair who had just heard a clueless person suddenly utter a forbidden word. Let's have it straight. Does she exist, that ghost? If it's a question of whether she exists or not, I would have to say that she doesn't. Probably. I'm sure she exists. Why? Have you ever met her? I've never met her directly, but... Shannon spoke in detail of how she'd sometimes feel a strange presence or see a silhouette while doing the midnight rounds. And each time she started, Jessica would immediately cut her off saying she must have seen it wrong or been mistaken. You haven't met her either. You gotta say either or either. Right, Goda-san? Oh, of course not. However, well, he was being very evasive. Even a man as big as Goda was apparently unable to deny the existence of someone he'd never met. This really didn't sit well with Jessica. She was a resident of this mansion herself. They were acting as though someone else, someone she didn't know, was living here. Of course she didn't like it. No, wait a sec. Tell me that story one more time. Huh? Which do you mean? The story about the VIP room. Goda and Shanna have been recounting several ghost stories about Beatrice. One of those drew a reaction from Jessica. Yeah, that one. Sounds pretty cool. Goda and Shannon glanced at each other. After all, it hadn't been a cool story to either of them. You mean that you mustn't enter the VIP room at 2 o'clock in the morning? The one about how Beatrice Summer returns to the VIP room every morning at 2 o'clock, so you mustn't go near it? Yeah, that's it. Pretty cool. All of the other stories are about people saying they heard or saw something Beatrice like, but this one isn't. This one says that if you go to the VIP room at 2 o'clock, you can actually meet Beatrice. Well, I wonder... Milady? They say that the servants who speak ill of Beatrice-sama are cursed. Furthermore, the VIP room is Beatrice-sama's room. Even you, milady, should probably reconsider. The VIP room is locked now, right? Where's the key? Was the key in the key box? I think Genji-sama keeps that key by his own chair. The master key can unlock it too, right? Let me borrow yours. But I cannot do that. I cannot do that. Milady, there's no need to approach such an ill-omened place without a reason. Hey, don't you go calling my house ill-omened. Anyway, I've made up my mind. If you can give me your master key, there's still that key from the VIP room, right? Let me borrow it. Milady? To Jessica, the expressions worn by the pair felt more like an ill omen than anything else did. In Jessica's eyes, the ill-omened thing wasn't the witch or the VIP room. It was them, Maria and the others who believed in witches. In the end, Jessica forced them to agree, and she made them bring her the key to the VIP room. So, you went on a classic test of courage to see if Beatrice would really appear in the VIP room or not. Pretty much. Still, I wonder why I was so fixated on doing it. I must still have been brooding over that fight I had had with the little Maria. Of course, the weather just had to be terrible on that particular night. To be honest, I slightly regretted sticking my nose into something so pointless. But I had already said so much and even borrowed the key from them. I couldn't just go to Shanna the next day and have her ask me how it went, and answer, well, I gave up because it was too scary. Tee. Normally, I'd go to sleep long before 2 o'clock a.m., and Red Bull does not exist yet. If Mom found me wandering the corridors at that time of night, she'd definitely yell at me. So I waited in my room, staring at the hands of my clock as it ticked closer to 2 o'clock. Outside, the rain was incredible, and the wind was strong. The swaying, rustling trees were particularly eerie. I'd complained to Shannon and Goda about making up ghost stories about my house, but I was starting to feel like those ghost stories might not be so impossible after all. The Ushiromiya mansion is huge. Honestly, I can't think of the entire mansion as my own house. As Mom says, the hallways of the Ushiromiya mansion should be treated like public roads. In other words, my own room is part of my home. But the hallways and the rooms I don't usually enter are outside. So while part of me felt like the VIP room ghost story was ridiculous, another part of me was so creeped out that it kept me frantically trying to convince myself that the first part of me was right. Only 10 minutes left till 2 o'clock. If I want to be inside the VIP room at 2 o'clock, I need to get there before then. Guess it's time. Sorry, but I'm not giving up that easily. Nothing's going to happen, I know that. It'll just be a stupid waste of time for a few minutes. I touched the doorknob to my door of my own room and was startled by how unpleasantly cold it was. As long as I stayed in this room, I could laugh off anything. After all, this was my room, but it wouldn't be like that in the hallway. That's outside my territory. And the doorknob of the barrier between the two is ice cold. Idiot. What are you so scared of me? You aren't taking Shannon's Goda-san's or maybe Kumasawa-san's gossip seriously, are you? I'll prove it. There's nothing strange in the VIP room. The corridor was only dimly lit. Before lights out time, the hallways were brighter, but to avoid wasting energy or something like that, we kept the lights to a minimum at night. So even though I was inside my own house, it was very clearly the middle of the night here. If Mom found out that I was wandering around at a time like this to do a test of courage in the VIP room, which I'm not even supposed to go in, I'd get in a lot of trouble. To make sure she didn't find out, I tried to hide my breathing and my footsteps, so the silence felt unbelievably loud. Even though it was quiet, that eerie sound of the wind was noisy. The sound of twigs rustling, the sound of some pillar in this old mansion creaking. What's that sound like? A beak tapping against glass. Though it was so quiet, all of the little suspicious sounds made it seem noisy. Damn, I'm an idiot. Why couldn't I have brought a flashlight at least? A flashlight to use inside my own home. Ha, that's even more idiotic. I mumbled this to myself, hoping it would drown out the sound of the wind just a little. Then I saw it. The door to the VIP room. This was the VIP room, the room for the important guests. However, as far as I knew it had never been used before. None of the guests who came to this mansion were important enough to be given use of this room. Though I'd been clutching the key the whole time, it didn't feel warm at all. It still ruthlessly and icily tormented me. Or maybe that was a warning? If you go back to your comfortable room and hide in your bed, this night will pass like any other. Don't mess with me. I can't give up after coming this far. Even though the key was freezing in my hand, telling me to go back, it slipped into the keyhole quite easily. All that's left is to turn the knob and open it, and I'll be inside the VIP room. It's not like I've never been in there before. Long ago I explored and played hide and seek all the time, and this room that I rarely entered seemed unusual and exciting. However, I got in trouble for going in and was told that this room was important, so one mustn't enter without a reason. After that, they made a rule of locking up unused rooms, and I couldn't go in anymore. So it's probably been several years since I've gone into the VIP room. In fact, it might be more than 10 years since the last time. The inside of the room was probably changed from how I remember it. Come to think of it, even then, I felt that there was something unsettling about it. Slowly I pushed the door open. The door was light, and even after I let go of it, it kept opening by itself as though beckoning me in. Beyond it was a darkness as thick and as heavy as ink. Even the dim light that peeked in from the corridor seemed bright in contrast. Gulp. I stuck my head in, feeling about for the light switch next to the doorway. This was a horribly awkward and uncomfortable way to do it. All I really had to do was step inside and search for the switch from there. Unwilling to take even a single step into the room, I timidly stuck just my arm into the darkness and felt along the wall. There. Click. The switch was hardly ever used, felt stiff and lifeless. However, once the light turned on, the darkness vanished in an instant, and there, exactly as it had been, as though not a thing had changed in all these years, was the VIP room. The curtain and bed cover might have been slightly different, and maybe the chairs and the like had changed too. Still, if I had to put it into words, I'd call it the feel. The stiff, lifeless feel of this room hadn't changed. If I hang around here, someone might find me. I'd rather not have Mom find me here. I readied myself, and though I couldn't even bring myself to enter this room when the lights were out, I finally entered. As soon as I closed the door, I felt an oppressive, suffocating sensation. All right, I've shut myself up in the VIP room. Bring it, Beatrice. What time is it now? I looked around the room, but I couldn't see any clock. I'm not in the habit of wearing a watch around the house. Damn. Now I'm not sure what time it is. Still, I know there's only a few minutes left at most. I tried to suppress my desire to use going to get a clock as an excuse to run away from this place. Even so, just standing around like this was boring. When I looked around again, searching for something to sit on, I found something very strange. What's this? It had been placed on the side table next to the bed. If this room had been used often, I'd have thought it was just one of the owner's personal belongings. But no one lived in this room, so this can't belong to the room's owner. What is this, an offering or something? Creepy. It really did look like an offering. A small French doll was sitting on the side table. The doll's hair, was gold. It was wearing a black dress. Just who managed to find this doll and where? There's no doubt that someone placed the doll here to symbolize Beatrice. Does that mean this doll is supposed to be the owner of this room or something? And looking like an offering to that owner, there sat a small plate with several cookies and wrapped chocolates. It was all set out neatly and there was no dust piled up on the doll. In other words, both the doll and the offering were taken care of on a regular basis by the servants, kept in good condition along with the rest of the room. Taken care of? No, it's more than that. It looked like an offering, no, like some sort of worship. A prayer saying, please don't curse us. So even though the doll was more than eerie enough by itself, viscerally, it was even more unnerving to imagine it being kept safe and worshipped in a place like this. Stupid. Am I supposed to clap my hands together and say, please don't curse me? Jessica forced herself to look away from the bizarre doll. She couldn't bring herself to sit on a bed that wasn't hers. Then again, she didn't really feel like sitting down on a chair either. She had lost any desire to sit on anything in this room. I wandered about aimlessly, then peeked out the window through the gaps in the curtain to stare at the dark, rainy night. What the hell am I doing? Hanging about in the VIP room this late just because that fight with Maria is still eating at me? This is totally pointless. Beatrice. Just when did that strange witch start living in this mansion? Grandfather's always yelling about Beatrice. Since it's apparently the name of his dead mistress, people started talking about how her ghost must haunt this mansion. There's that kid's horror story about how the witch in the forest, which might be a ghost story made from adults to stop the kids from going in there. The portrait grandfather had hung in April was really striking, and there was also that weird epitaph. The creepy words on that, which sounded like some sort of a ceremony with human sacrifices, made the name of Beatrice seem all the more unnerving. At some point, those stories mixed together, and now people say that the witch Beatrice exists. I don't believe in Beatrice because I know she's just a fictional person made by the fusion of a few horror stories. The Beatrice who was grandfather's mistress probably did exist, but she wasn't a witch. The story of the Witch of the Forest was made up by the adults to prevent their kids from getting lost in the woods, but that was just a made-up story, not reality. In fact, I've heard that the adults here once scared the kids with stories about how the wolves living in the forest. Apparently the kids realized the wolves couldn't possibly be there, so it was changed to the witch. When the portrait was hung, that once vague character suddenly had a face, and people acted as though she had been around since long ago. That's right, it's all a ghost story someone made up, a fiction, and Maria calls Beatrice her best friend, and the servants worship her like a household shrine. I just don't get it, and it creeps me out. Startle noises. The sudden ring of the phone made me jump so hard I thought my heart would explode. There was a phone on the bedside table across from the one with the doll, and it was ringing noisily. However, I was only surprised by the first ring. By the time it had rung 3 times, I regained my cool enough to grumble about this being a prank done by someone trying to scare me. If I rush to pick it up, I'll probably hear someone laughing at me saying, "Ha, were you scared?" I thought about ignoring it instead, but it kept on ringing incessantly. It was a pretty loud sound to be going on and on this late at night. If Mom somehow manages to hear it from her room, I'm screwed. Okay, I've got it. Might as well say you scared me or whatever. I decided to pick up the receiver. I'll just say, that surprised me, waha, and maybe follow up with that looks like Beatrice didn't show up after all. After all, this is my victory in a sense. Hello? Ooh. Hi, Beatrice. Huh? Maria? I don't get it. Did I hear that wrong? Why would Maria be calling here? Hello? Thanks for teaching me that fun song last time. In return, I'm going to sing you a song, Beatrice. I just learned this one. Ooh. The voice, the intonation, the manner of speech, all of it clearly belonged to Maria. But what's she talking about? All by herself? Maria just kept on talking happily as I stood there, stunned and unable to interrupt. Eventually, Maria started singing an old familiar kid's song that even I knew. I don't get it. Maria, hello? Wait a sec, stop singing. What's going on? I don't get it. Hello? Ah! The voice and the lights, everything disappeared. In the pitch black, I couldn't see anything. Couldn't tell what was happening. I don't get it. What's going on? What the hell was that? Does being in darkness really slow us humans down so much? I know it's dark, but I really have absolutely no idea what just happened. What was that shuffling sound just now? I'm not sure. I can't explain it. I heard an incredible slithering sound, like someone crawling out of a bed. I didn't think I heard it. It wasn't that vague. I definitely heard it happen right next to me. Clearly. However, there was no change to the bed. No one had been sleeping there in the first place, and the sheets were still perfectly straight. Someone had crawled out of the bed and had laughed in a creepy voice before leaving the room. That's what it felt like. Felt like? I'm here, and the bed's right there. I'm not only in the same room, I'm right next to it. So why am I so unsure about what happened just a few seconds ago? I gripped the receiver, which had gone completely silent, and waited there alone, unable to move, in a quiet room that seemed exactly identical to the one I'd entered. Huh? What? If nothing has changed since the beginning, I could just pretend that the last minute or so didn't happen, and yet, if something has changed, that would prove that something really did happen. The hell? Where'd it go? Did it fall to the floor? No, it's not there. No matter where I look, from whatever angle, it's not there. The offering plate with the cookies and the chocolate is still here. But the thing they were being offered to. The doll is gone. No way. Then, what just happened? Is the Beatrice-sama doll supposed to have cackled out loud and left the room? No, that crawling sound was too loud to have been made by a doll. It was a noisy sort of sound, like a kid playing with a blanket and using it as a cape. Then what? Is that Beatrice-sama doll supposed to have turned into a human and then run cackling from the room? No way. After that, nothing happened. The doll alone disappeared and nothing else changed. In a VIP room that had remained completely unchanged was filled only with the sound of the wind and the rain. I stood there, too shocked to move. Did you ever find that doll? I looked everywhere, even under the bed, but I didn't find it. Just what did you think had happened in that room? I don't think it was actually Beatrice-sama's curse. It might have been a prank done by the servants. A prank. Maybe they recorded Maria's voice beforehand. They then called at exactly 2 o'clock and pushed the play button. They could have cut the power at the switchboard or something. Then someone who'd been hiding in the VIP room would make a creepy laugh, then take the doll and leave. If that's how it happened, everything fits. Doesn't sound like you're really convinced. No kidding. After all, if that was just a prank to scare me, the scale was way too large. They made Maria sing beforehand and recorded it. Then someone called the VIP room and replayed that recording. Then someone waited until exactly the right time and tripped the breaker for the VIP room. To turn off the power to the VIP room, you'd have to go to the basement. There's a switchboard booth down in the boiler room. There's no phone line down there, so you'd need a different person to play back Maria's tape. And you'd need another person to hide in the VIP room and cackle before leaving. And just how long would this person have to hide in the VIP room beforehand? How long would they have to hide in the pitch black VIP room under the bed, or, for example, waiting to scare Jessica, who might or might not even come? There's no way it could be a witch's curse, but still, to me, it's even creepier to imagine that many people planning everything down to the slightest detail and waiting for several hours in the darkness just to scare me. I agree. A curse would be better. Did you ask the servants about that later on? What's the point? They just played dumb, of course, and there's had to have been at least 3 of them. On that day, Genji-san, Goto-san, Kumasawa-san, and Shannon-san stayed the night. So 3 of those 4 helped out with that creepy prank. It doesn't make sense. That's why I couldn't ask about it. Genji cut the power, Kumasawa played the tape, and Shannon was the one hiding in the room. True, it had been a strange experience for her, but it wasn't something completely impossible for humans to do. Even so, it really must have been more unnerving to imagine a large number of people planning so carefully just to scare Jessica. It's no surprise that Jessica found this scarier than Beatrice's curse. Beatrice's curse. Do you still believe that the servants tricked you? No. I was probably scared and mistook what I saw and heard. The doll probably just fell somewhere and I had trouble finding it. Are you trying to say you imagined the whole thing? Other than the doll disappearing, there was no other proof that anything had changed. Later on, I talked to Maria, and she said she didn't know anything about that song or the phone call. I don't know if she was lying or not, of course. Anyway, what happened that night is just something I thought happened, and there's no proof of any kind. That's ironic. Even if you claimed to have met Beatrice directly, you would have been just as unable to prove it. The shock lasted a while, but as time passed, I began to think the lightning or something must have shut off the power for a second, and maybe one of the trees in the garden fell, which I mistook for the slithering sound. And the laugh? Maybe some strange bird. Anyway, I might have misheard something to get to that sound. I act tough, but you wouldn't believe how much of a coward I actually am. That's why I let my imagination get a hold of me. I tried to use that as an excuse to help me forget everything that happened that night. And everything is enshrouded in darkness. People are actually pretty good at forgetting things if they try. After that night, I'd feel pretty uncomfortable every time I heard the word Beatrice, but I tried not to let it show on my face. That's all. I can't tell you any more than that. It's kind of embarrassing, so please don't tell anyone. I don't want them knowing I'm a chicken. Sure thing. I have one last question. About the VIP room? No. About the dining hall. The dining hall? On the day of the family conference just before your ghost story, all the relatives were gathered in the dining hall, right? Yeah. Except Battler hadn't come back to the family yet. Everyone else was there. Everyone except Grandfather, of course. And Angie wasn't in the room because of her stomach ache. Her seat was next to yours, wasn't it? Yep. Was that the seat to your right? Yeah, the seat to my right. Why does it matter? Huh?